Hi, this is Dr. Monte. Do you ever feel like you're just so overwhelmed and depressed you can't take it anymore? Do you feel like you're at the end of the rope and you just want to give up and end it all? Do you feel suicidal? Do you feel like no one would ever miss you even if you're gone, or people would be better off without you? Do you feel like you just can't take the pain anymore and you just got to have the pain end, no matter what? If you're suicidal, please watch these short videos. Come back and stay tuned, and I have some things I have to share with you before you act on it and do anything. Hi, I'm Dr. Monte. When I was 16 years old, I was a typical suburbanite kid in Dallas, Texas. Well, typical in that day and age because parents were starting to divorce. My mom and dad were divorced. I was just living with my mom. My older brother and I were real close, but he had moved off to college. My older sister had just gone off and gotten married, and my mom and I were all alone but very close with each other and very happy. She had had a stroke 2 years earlier, but she had bounced back and recovered. Then one morning I woke up and she was yelling for me to come down, and something was terribly wrong, and we called the ambulance and they came, got her, and rushed her to the hospital. It turned out she had had a second stroke, and some of those words were the final words I'd ever hear, because she ended up going into a coma and ended up passing away soon after that. Needless to say, I was devastated. My family was all away from me. The rest of my family were all gone. My sister and her husband did move in, but because of her stress and the pressure she felt, we were fighting like cats and dogs. My best friend had actually also moved away, and so I was pretty darn lonely, pretty darn miserable. It was pretty much about as bad of a storm as I could imagine in my life, and it was just terrible. I couldn't take it anymore. So at some point there, I didn't act upon it, but I'm really close to suicide. I really felt about it, I really thought about it, and I almost acted upon it. I'll tell you more in another video how I learned to get over it myself and move on, but I want you to know that I do understand, that I want to be real and genuine on these videos and share some of my own struggles that I've had to deal with. Of course, one thing I have to make sure you understand are these videos are not to replace therapy. If you at all are suicidal, you need to contact the National Suicide Hotline number that was on the screen, and they'll be in the information listed below this video. Please contact a therapist, please contact that line, contact somebody, and just don't act upon it yet at all, please. As in all my videos, I don't want to ever make you think that I'm minimizing your pain or suffering. I normally spend a lot of time addressing my patients, my clients' pains and suffering before I at all try to get them to move on to something better. But we don't have that luxury here. Just assume that I understand, because I have been in this field for a long time and I do know what it's like. I've had a personal level. My grandfather killed himself on the front yard. I was only one, but it certainly devastated my dad and my aunt a lot. When I was about 12 years old, I had one of my best friends from church. Her dad killed himself for no apparent reason. 45-year-old man, seemingly happily married and normal life, and just unhappy with something, decided to take his own life. The family was devastated, needless to say. My mom was good friends with her mom and took care of her. My friend had a good, strong faith and was able to get through it relatively okay. But the older sister of my friend, just seemed like she didn't take it well at all. I know she went through years of searching and struggling and wandering around the world trying to find herself, and I hope she found herself at some point in time. But I want to let you know that suicide can have a devastating effect on people all around you, and we need to address that in much more detail. But on this video, I really want to address your thinking. You've got to understand how you think. That's a very important piece of this puzzle. When you're suicidal, or when you're depressed, when we're in any really strong emotional state at all, our thinking tends to be much more narrow-minded. We just see what we want to see in the emotion of the time. We don't feel like there's any other options, there's no other truth. This is reality, and that's all there is to it. But you've got to understand, you can't trust your thinking when you're emotional like that. You've got to be able to see that you're like a horse with blinders, and there is more to the picture on the other sides of you. Imagine you're a judge and you're trying to weigh the evidence, but you've got to first see what the evidence is. You need to see that when we're depressed, our brain kind of goes in this automatic mode where it starts looking for all the other pieces of evidence that confirm our opinion. Yeah, my life is terrible. It's no good. I'm unlovable. I'm a failure. Whatever your thoughts are, that's what your brain starts looking for, more pieces to confirm that hypothesis. But you've got to be able to look at other evidence. What our brain also does is minimizes the other things. Well, there is this going for me in my life. Oh no, that doesn't mean anything. It's not really important. It's not really real. It doesn't really matter. But it does, and it can. You've got to understand that when you're suicidal, you see there are no other options, but there are other options. You just can't see the forest for the trees. So be a good, fair judge. This is your life you're talking about. You've got to make a calm, rational decision. The worst mistakes in our lives are made when we're emotional and we just react on instinct without fully thinking it through. Emotions are great, but emotions get us into a heck of a lot of trouble. We need to use logic. That's when we make better decisions that end up resulting in our increased happiness. You've got to see that, please. Okay, one of the good examples for this I like to share is just that this is the most vivid example I've seen in my life to illustrate my point of emotions. Is a certain relative of mine. She's so emotional all the time, and when she was, she was married, a decent guy, but when she was happily married, when they were happy together, she was like, "Oh, I love him. He's the best husband in the world. I'm just so glad I found him, and we're just so happy." They do one thing wrong and she'd get mad, she'd get in a bad mood, and all of a sudden she was just throwing things and yelling and screaming, even in front of her kids, and saying, you no good SOB, I wish I'd never married you, it was the worst mistake of my life, and I hate you, and we need to get divorced. Now, two different extremes. And when you would ask her when she was in one mood, like when she was happy, what about the times when you're upset at him? It was like, oh, I was just being emotional, silly me, you know how I get when I'm angry. But the real truth is he's a good husband and we're happily married. But you ask her when she's mad and she'll say, no, the truth is he is a no good son of a gun, and I'm just trying to fool myself when I'm happy, trying to convince myself that we're happy, when in reality we're not. Her view was the truth, no matter which way she was looking, that was the truth. Oh no, wait, over here. Oh no, wait, that's the truth. Oh, wait, oh no, the truth is he's a decent guy and he's good, he makes mistakes, and he really does a lot of other good things. That's the truth. There is a middle ground there, as are in most things. But you understand, when you're suicidal, you're like her. Don't be like her. Don't be like that where you just don't see the full truth. You're convinced yourself that this is the truth. Oh no, Dr. Miller, you don't understand. This is the truth. No, it's not. There's always more to the picture, and there's always other sides of the coin. Please keep that in mind. It's probably the most number single one thing that I can try to teach you on this is just to open up your eyes and look at other perspectives. Another mistake that we can make in our thinking when we're really upset is to overgeneralize things. Because this one person broke up with me, that means I'm unlovable. Trust me, in college, girl broke up with me, and I look back on it and just laugh how stupid I was and how dramatic I was, because I thought that. And I started to realize it's like there are many other fish in the sea, and much better than her, really. But I got so emotional and so upset at the time. We can fail. I've had my share of failures too, business-wise and many other things. And you tend to think, when I failed, I'll never be a success. I love stories in the business world, like Sam Walton, who developed Walmart. It's like I forget exactly. That was like his 7th, 8th business adventure before he ended up succeeding. Many other people who are successful did the same thing. They failed many, many, many times, but they kept trying. You just can't overgeneralize when things are like that. Just because someone rejected you, or what about when someone dies and you feel like this emptiness in your hole will never get better and you can't live without them? I know how that feels, of course, my story, but you go on and you are happier, and that hole, there'll always be a little hole in your heart. I'll never say you'll ever be happy about it or you'll ever fully get over it, but things will get better. It really will. And you need to move on, and your whole heart will heal. It just seems like forever right now, but it will, I promise you. Just don't overgeneralize and think just because whatever's bothering you now will always be this way. There's so much more to your story to that. I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of old folks. Most of my 20 years has been spent working in nursing homes, where I serve a whole lot of people who have been hurt and injured and sick in their later years. But sometimes I deal with people in their 40s or 50s who have terrible injuries too. But for the old folks, I can tell you, you go through their lives and they'll tell me about their children dying. I can imagine something worse than that. breakups, divorces, failures, all kinds of troubles in their life. And yet then they go on and tell the rest of their story, and there's, most of the time there's always these other happy endings that come after the tragedy. And they would have missed all that if they had ended their life. I tell you, there's just countless stories over 20 years that I could give you the examples of that. The proof is in the pudding there, that there is more to your story. So learn from the old folks. Don't make some mistakes of just selling yourself short and selling your life short.